Marian Hartwell lay on a gurney under the harsh fluorescent lights, her chest aching as the doctor murmured about stress-induced palpitations. At 63, her body had finally rebelled against years of quiet endurance. The nurse adjusted her while Marian scrolled through her phone, trying to distract herself. A notification appeared. "Renee tagged you in a photo." Marian's heart lurched, thinking perhaps it was a get-well message. Instead, the image was of a gleaming dinner table at her old house, her son Caleb at the head, his wife radiant in Marian's former chair, and 12-year-old Chloe laughing off camera. The caption read, "Finally a day without the drama queen. Family dinners are so peaceful." Marian stared at the screen, numb, while the nurse asked if her son was coming to pick her up. The timestamp on the post showed it was uploaded just after the hospital had called Caleb. He knew where she was, and he had chosen dinner instead. Marian's voice was steady when she answered the nurse. "No, I'll call a taxi." Alone in the lobby, she did something she hadn't done in years. She dialed her old real estate agent. "Barbara, it's Marian Hartwell. Remember that Maple Street house you said would sell in a week? I'm ready to list it." Barbara didn't miss a beat. "Marian, I was wondering when you'd come to your senses. Can we meet tomorrow morning?" Marian clutched the phone, her lips pressing into a thin line. For the first time in years, she felt a surge of control. 3 years earlier, after Tom's funeral, Marian had thought she was being the perfect mother. Caleb had been so attentive then, stopping by daily, sometimes with Renee and Chloe, bringing groceries and gentle smiles. "Mom, you shouldn't rattle around in this big house all by yourself," Caleb had said one evening on the porch. "It's not healthy." Renee had nodded sympathetically. All those memories everywhere. It must be so hard. Their concern had seemed genuine. Caleb had suggested they move in temporarily, just until Marian decided what to do long-term. It would be good for Chloe, he'd said, and Marian wouldn't be alone. "It's just temporary," Renee had assured her. "Maybe a year at most." Within 6 months they had fully moved in. Marian rented a 1-bedroom apartment across town, paying monthly rent while they lived mortgage-free in the house she and Tom had spent decades paying off. She didn't know then they'd been redirecting her mail, screening her finances, or laying the groundwork for a takeover. Every time she raised the idea of them moving out, there was a new crisis. Caleb's unstable job, Renee's pregnancy scare, Chloe's school transitions. Visits to her old house became awkward. Her belongings vanished into storage or donation piles. They painted over wallpaper she and Tom had chosen together. She felt like a guest in her own life. Barbara arrived at Marian's small apartment the next morning with Patricia Morgan, a sharp-eyed attorney who specialized in family property disputes. "Before we proceed," Patricia began, spreading documents across the tiny kitchen table, "I need to understand the living arrangement. Was there any formal lease? Any documented rent?" Marian shook her head. "No. It was just family helping family." Patricia exchanged a look with Barbara. "That's both good and bad news. Good because you retain full ownership rights. Bad because they may try to claim tenant protections or even adverse possession after 3 years of continuous occupancy." Marian's coffee went bitter in her mouth. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. Patricia leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "It means we have to be very careful about eviction. They might fight this in court. And Marian, you need to prepare yourself. Family battles can get ugly." Barbara slid a folder across the table. "There's more. Tax records show liens filed and released in the past 18 months. Did you know about those?" Marian blinked. "Liens? What kind?" "Home improvement loans," Barbara explained. "All paid off, but it suggests heavy borrowing against your property's equity." The room tilted. "I never authorized any loans," Marian whispered. Patricia's gaze sharpened. "When did you last check your credit report?" Marian's silence was answer enough. Patricia exhaled. "We'll pull it immediately. If they've been intercepting your mail, there could be far more damage than you realize." The next morning, Patricia returned with printouts that made Marian's blood run cold. There are several accounts in your name showing activity at Caleb's address, she explained, sliding papers forward. Credit cards, loans, even a home equity line. Marian's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. I never opened these. Patricia's tone hardened. Then someone did it for you. Barbara gave a low whistle. Honey, selling the house might be the least of your problems. Marian sat back, dizzy with betrayal. All those family dinners she had missed, all those times she thought she was being too sensitive, it had never been in her head. They had been stealing from her while smiling across the table. By 7 the next morning, Marian's phone buzzed like an alarm. Caleb's name flashed. She let it go to voicemail, sipping her coffee. His voice filled the message, brimming with indignation. Mom, we need to talk. Some woman called saying she's our listing agent. Obviously a mistake. Call me back immediately. The phone rang again. This time it was Renee. Marian answered slowly. Good morning, Renee. Renee's voice was sharp. Eleanor, what is going on? A real estate agent called Caleb about listing the house. Is this a scam? Marian took another sip of coffee before replying. Barbara Henderson is my agent. She's been in business 30 years. Hardly a scammer. Silence. Then Renee snapped. Your agent? That doesn't make sense. We've been living here 3 years. Marian's voice cut like glass. Living, yes. Owning, no. The deed is still in my name. The silence that followed was thick. Marian imagined Renee's face, her painted nails tapping against the counter as she tried to form an argument. But we've been maintaining the place, Renee stammered. We painted, we fixed the roof, With my money, Marian interrupted. Every bill, every repair, every utility in the last 3 years was paid by me. Caleb's voice suddenly cut in, speakerphone. Mom, this is insane. You can't just sell our home out from under us. Marian's heart hardened. Our home, she repeated. It stopped being ours when you celebrated my absence on social media. The phone line went dead silent. Marian let the silence hang, enjoying for once that the burden of explanation wasn't hers. Finally, Renee's voice returned, brittle. That post wasn't about you. Marian laughed softly, the sound without humor. Of course not. Just like forgetting my birthday wasn't about me. Or missing my calls. Or excluding me from Chloe's birthday party. Always not about me. She let the words settle. Caleb tried again, his voice cautious. Mom, you're overreacting. We can talk this through. Marian's tone was cold steel. Then let's talk about the $75,000 home equity loan you took out in my name 6 months ago. The line erupted. Caleb protesting, Renee swearing it was a misunderstanding, but Marian simply pressed end call. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She felt dangerous. Later that day, Marian sat with a notebook, making a different kind of list. Not groceries. Not errands. Record. Every forgotten birthday. Every time Caleb dismissed her calls, every family event she wasn't invited to. February, she asked him to help move furniture. He said he was busy, then posted ski trip photos. January, Renee forgot to save her a seat at Chloe's play. December, Christmas gifts exchanged. And Marian received only a clearance rack candle. The list grew quickly, ink marking years of neglect. But when she pulled up Renee's Instagram, her stomach twisted. Post after post showed a family life where she no longer existed. Vacations she'd never heard about. Parties she hadn't been invited to. And under each, comments that painted Marian as difficult, reclusive, going through some things. Lies told so often they'd become public truth. The most painful discovery came from Chloe's 12th birthday photos. Marian hadn't even known there had been a party. A friend had asked in the comments, "Did Grandma come?" Caleb himself had replied, "Mom's been demanding lately. We thought it best to keep it stress-free for Chloe." Marian read it again and again, the words striking harder than any physical blow. Demanding. That was the word her son used to excuse her absence from her granddaughter's life. She sat in her chair, hands trembling, the notebook sliding off her lap. They hadn't been protecting her. They hadn't been too busy. They had been systematically shutting her out. Patricia's next discovery sealed everything. The credit report showed not just one loan but multiple accounts Marian had never touched. Credit cards, personal loans, even a jewelry store account. All traced back to Caleb's phone number and their Maple Street address. "They've been funding their lifestyle with your name," Patricia explained grimly. "This isn't neglect. It's fraud." Marian's breath caught when she saw the charges. Private tennis lessons for Chloe. Spa treatments for Renee. Weekend trips. Thousands of dollars in restaurants. And then the one that broke her. An $8,000 resort vacation the very Christmas they had told her they wanted to keep things low-key. Tears blurred the paper, but anger quickly burned them dry. Enough was enough. At dawn, Marian printed every statement, every forged signature, every detail that proved what had been happening. The folder grew heavy in her hands. But Patricia's warning made it heavier still. "They're not just stealing," she said quietly. "Look at these inquiries. Elder law attorneys. Conservatorship assessments. Marian, they're preparing to have you declared incompetent." The words felt unreal. Her own son and daughter-in-law were building a case to take away her freedom, her independence, her dignity. "They want control of everything," Barbara muttered, her voice thick with fury. Marian sat in silence, the betrayal cutting so deep she could barely breathe. But when she finally spoke, her voice carried a strength she hadn't felt in years. "Then we move faster. We sell the house. We file charges. We stop them before they stop me." By noon, the battlefront moved to her doorstep. A knock rattled her apartment door. When Marian opened it, Chloe stood there, eyes red from crying, clutching a small suitcase. "Grandma, please don't make us homeless," the girl sobbed. "Mom says we'll have to live in the car." Marian's heart cracked at the sight of her granddaughter being used as a pawn. She pulled the child into her arms, guiding her to the couch. "Sweetheart, you're safe here. But tell me, did your parents send you up alone?" Chloe nodded, fresh tears falling. Through the window, Marian could see the family car idling at the curb, Caleb and Renee's silhouettes waiting. Close enough to coach Chloe, far enough to keep their own hands clean. Marian stroked her granddaughter's hair, her fury simmering. This wasn't just fraud anymore. It was war. Chloe sniffled into Marian's sweater, her small shoulders trembling. "Grandma, Daddy said you don't love us anymore. That's why you're selling the house." Marian's chest tightened, but she kept her voice gentle. "Sweetheart, that's not true. I love you more than anything. This isn't about you. This is about choices your parents made." Chloe frowned, confused. "But Mom said you're sick. That you don't know what's best anymore." The words pierced Marian like knives. So, they were already planting seeds of incompetence in her granddaughter's mind. She cupped Chloe's face, forcing eye contact. "I'm not sick, darling. I'm stronger than they want you to believe. And I will always take care of you." Through the curtain, she saw Renee gesturing impatiently from the car. Marian's jaw set. If they thought using Chloe would weaken her resolve, they'd badly underestimated her. When Chloe left reluctantly with her parents, Marian wasted no time. Patricia and Barbara returned that afternoon with documents ready for signatures. "The house will be listed tomorrow," Barbara confirmed, sliding a pen across the table. Patricia added, "And I'll be filing a criminal complaint this evening. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. The evidence is undeniable." Marian signed each page with steady hands, though her pulse pounded. "Once this begins," Patricia warned, "there's no going back. They will fight dirty." Marian gave a bitter smile. "They already sent my granddaughter to beg on their behalf. How much dirtier can it get?" Patricia raised an eyebrow. "You'd be surprised." Marian felt the truth of it in her bones. Caleb and Renee weren't going to let their golden life slip away without a battle. That evening, Caleb showed up at her apartment door. His expression carefully composed between charm and anger. "Mom, can we talk?" Marian didn't move to let him in. "Talk," she said flatly. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "You blindsided us. Selling the house. After everything. We've built our lives there." Marian's lips pressed thin. "Built your lives, yes. With my money. With my name." His eyes flashed. "That's not fair. We've taken care of that place. We've taken care of you." Marian's laugh was sharp. "You took care of me. Caleb, I collapsed in a hospital bed while you toasted my absence over dinner." Caleb's face reddened, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice dropping. "If you go through with this, Mom, you'll regret it." Marian's eyes didn't flinch. "I already regret trusting you." The next morning, Barbara's prediction proved true. Offers on the house came within hours of listing. Barbara called, excitement in her voice. "Cash buyers, Marian. We'll be closing sooner than expected." Marian smiled faintly. But Patricia's call later brought darker news. "Your son has already retained a lawyer. They're claiming you're unfit to handle financial matters and need oversight. We expected this, but it's moving faster than I'd hoped." Marian's hand tightened on the phone. "So, the conservatorship plan is real." Patricia's voice softened. "Yes, but now that you know, you're ahead of them. The evidence you've gathered will dismantle their case." Marian gazed out her window at the quiet street. Ahead of them. For the first time in years, she wasn't reacting, she was preparing. That night, Marian dreamed of Tom, her late husband. In the dream, he sat at their Maple Street dining table, smiling the way he always had when she was flustered. "Don't let them take from you what we built," he said gently. When she woke, tears streaked her face, but her resolve was steel. She whispered into the dawn light, "I won't, Tom. I promise." The phone buzzed again, this time a text from Renee. "If you loved Chloe, you wouldn't do this. Think about her future." Marian stared at it, anger simmering. Renee wasn't worried about Chloe's future. She was worried about losing spa trips and private tennis lessons. Marian typed back one line. "Chloe's future doesn't depend on fraud." Then she turned her phone face down. For the first time in years, she had nothing to hide from. By midweek, things escalated further. A manila envelope arrived by courier, stamped with Caleb's attorney's letterhead. Marian opened it slowly, heart pounding. Inside was a petition for guardianship, claiming she was incapable of managing her affairs. Patricia read it carefully, her mouth tightening. "This is aggressive. They're pushing hard." Marian tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. "Incapable. I've run a household, raised a son, managed investments for decades." Patricia squeezed her hand. "Exactly. And we'll prove it. But they're betting on fear and fatigue breaking you down." Marian straightened her shoulders. "Then let's give them something they don't expect, me fighting back." The following day, Renee cornered Marian in the grocery store. Her smile was sweet, her voice dripping with venom. "You're really going through with this, aren't you?" Marian met her gaze without blinking. "I am." Renee leaned in closer, her perfume cloying. "You think you're punishing us, but you're only punishing Chloe. She's the one who'll suffer." Marian's tone was ice. "Chloe suffers when she's taught that lying and stealing are acceptable. I won't let her grow up thinking this is normal." Renee's mask slipped, anger flashing across her face. "You'll die alone, Eleanor. That's what you're buying yourself." Marian didn't flinch. Better alone with dignity than surrounded by thieves. She pushed her cart past Renee, leaving her speechless in the aisle. By Friday, Patricia had arranged a meeting at the courthouse to preempt the guardianship petition. "We'll file evidence of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse," Patricia explained, spreading documents across her office table. Marian looked at the growing stack: bank statements, forged signatures, social media posts, and the damning credit reports. "It feels like a mountain," she murmured. Patricia smiled faintly. "It is. And mountains crush those who think they can climb them without preparation." Caleb and Renee are about to learn that. Marian touched the papers, the weight of proof finally grounding her. For years, she'd been gaslit into thinking she was overreacting. Now the truth was tangible, unshakable. That weekend, Caleb called again, this time from an unknown number. Marian answered, weary but steady. "Mom, please. Let's talk like family. Drop all this legal nonsense. We can work it out privately." Marian's voice was quiet but cutting. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't steal identities. Family doesn't try to have their mother declared incompetent. Caleb's voice cracked. "We just wanted stability. You don't understand how hard it's been." Marian closed her eyes, remembering the vacations, the designer purchases, the jewelry receipts. Hard. Hard is burying a husband after 35 years of marriage. Hard is waking up alone in a one-bedroom apartment while your son throws dinner parties in your house. "Don't talk to me about hard." She hung up before he could answer. Sunday morning, Marian dressed carefully in a navy suit she hadn't worn since Tom's funeral. She looked at herself in the mirror. Lines of age, yes, but also lines of survival. "They wanted me weak," she whispered. "But I'm stronger than they know." At the courthouse, Patricia walked beside her, steady as a shield. Reporters had already caught wind of the story, their cameras flashing as Marian entered. One shouted, "Mrs. Hartwell, is it true your son is accusing you of incompetence?" Marian paused, her chin lifting. "It's true he tried," she said calmly. "But what's more true is that I raised him better. Sometimes children forget their lessons. And sometimes mothers have to remind them." Patricia squeezed her arm as they walked through the heavy doors. The war wasn't over, but Marian was no longer a victim stepping into battle. She was a general. Inside the courtroom, Marian sat tall while Patricia addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this case isn't about guardianship. It's about fraud. We have documentation of loans, credit cards, and forged signatures, all in Marian Hartwell's name, all linked to her son Caleb and his wife Renee." The judge flipped through the folder, his expression hardening. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his seat, whispering to Renee. Marian forced herself not to look at them. She focused instead on the gavel, the seal of the court, the steady voice of Patricia dismantling years of betrayal. When it was Caleb's turn, his lawyer painted Marian as confused, grieving, incapable of managing finances. But when Marian calmly recited account numbers, payment dates, and loan details from memory, the courtroom fell silent. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Hartwell, you seem quite competent to me." Caleb's face drained of color. After the hearing, Renee cornered Marian in the courthouse hallway, her smile brittle. "Enjoy your little victory, Eleanor. But you'll regret humiliating us." Marian met her glare without hesitation. "The only thing I regret is giving you 3 years of my trust. That ends today." Renee leaned closer, her voice low and venomous. "You think Chloe will forgive you for destroying her family? Children never forget." Marian's voice dropped, calm and sharp. "She won't forget, no. But she'll remember who protected her future from people who abused it." Renee's mask cracked, her lips trembling before she stormed away. Patricia placed a hand on Marian's shoulder. "You held your ground. That's the beginning." Marian exhaled slowly. For once, she didn't feel small in Renee's presence. She felt unshakable. The story spread quickly. A local reporter's headline read, "Widow battles own son in fraud case." By Monday morning, Marian's phone buzzed non-stop with calls from neighbors, old friends, even church members she hadn't seen in years. Some offered support. Others whispered curiosity. Marian ignored them all. Instead, she focused on her lawyer's checklist. Freeze fraudulent accounts, notify credit bureaus, document every communication. Barbara called with more good news. "We've got 3 strong offers on the house. You'll walk away with a clean sale and cash in hand." Marian closed her eyes in relief. For 3 years she had felt trapped, invisible. Now she was reclaiming not just her home but her name. That night, Caleb appeared again, this time alone. He knocked softly, no lawyer, no wife. Marian opened the door halfway, her face unreadable. "What do you want, Caleb?" He looked exhausted, his hair disheveled. "Mom, messed up. But please don't do this. Don't ruin us." Marian's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Ruin you? Caleb, you ruined yourself the moment you forged my signature." His eyes brimmed with something like shame, but Marian had seen too much to be swayed. "I never meant for it to go this far," he whispered. Marian's tone cut through his excuses. "You meant every step, Caleb. The mail, the loans, the lies. You chose all of it. And now I choose myself." Caleb's voice cracked. "I was just trying to keep things stable for Chloe. For Renee. For all of us." Marian shook her head. "You weren't keeping things stable. You were keeping them comfortable. There's a difference." For the first time, Caleb seemed small to her, like the boy who once begged her not to tell Tom about a broken window, except this time the damage wasn't glass. It was her trust, her future, her freedom. "Please, Mom," he tried again. "Don't press charges. We can fix this." Marian closed the door gently but firmly. "I already pressed them." His stunned face was the last thing she saw before the latch clicked shut. Patricia called the next day with an update. "The DA's office is moving forward. They're filing multiple counts of identity theft and fraud." Marian felt a strange mix of grief and relief. "So he could go to prison?" Patricia's voice was steady. "Yes, but remember, this isn't about revenge. It's about justice and protection." Marian nodded slowly. She didn't want her son behind bars. She wanted him accountable. For years she had borne the weight of his choices alone. Now the law would carry some of it for her. The following week, Chloe slipped away from Renee after school and came to Marian's apartment. Her eyes were wide, her backpack heavy on her shoulders. "Grandma, is Daddy going to jail?" she whispered. Marian crouched to meet her gaze. "Sweetheart, your daddy made mistakes. Big ones. And when people make mistakes, they have to face the consequences." Chloe's lip quivered. "But will he still love me?" Marian's throat tightened. She gathered the child into her arms. "Yes, a parent's love doesn't disappear. But sometimes love gets twisted by bad choices. That's why I have to fight, to protect you too." Chloe clung tighter. "I wish things were like before." Marian stroked her hair. "So do I, darling. But sometimes before is gone, and all we can do is build something better." As weeks passed, Caleb's world unraveled. His employer suspended him after hearing of the charges. Friends distanced themselves. Renee's social media posts shifted from vacation selfies to vague complaints about betrayal and fake family. Marian scrolled past them without emotion. For years, she had been the silent backdrop to their curated happiness. Now she no longer existed in their story. And she was fine with that. Her focus was on the closing date of the house sale. Barbara called cheerfully. "We're locked in for next Friday. Cash transfer ready. Marian, you're walking out free." Marian looked around her small apartment, already imagining the freedom of choosing her own new home. Not one forced on her, but one she would claim herself. On the morning of the house closing, Marian stood outside the Maple Street property one last time. The walls she had painted with Tom, the garden he had tended, the laughter that once filled the rooms. It all came back in waves. Caleb and Renee stood on the porch, their faces bitter. "Happy now?" Renee spat. "You've destroyed your family." Marian's eyes welled, but her voice stayed calm. "No, Renee. I saved what was left of it. And I saved myself." Caleb looked at her, pleading, but she turned away. Barbara placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "It's time." Marian walked inside, not as the woman being pushed out, but as the owner taking her final bow. When the papers were signed and the funds transferred, Marian felt an invisible weight lift. The house was no longer hers, but neither was the burden of betrayal tied to it. Patricia smiled across the conference table. "You did it. You closed one chapter." Marian exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. Now I can finally start another. Outside the office, sunlight broke through the clouds, warm against her face. She whispered softly as though Tom could hear. We built something beautiful. And I will carry that strength into whatever comes next. For the first time in years, Marian felt not like a victim or a burden, but like herself again, whole, steady, unbroken. The fraud trial opened 2 weeks later. Marian sat beside Patricia, her folder of evidence neatly stacked. Caleb avoided her gaze. His once proud shoulders slumped. Renee sat rigid, her lips pressed thin, glaring daggers. The prosecutor laid out the case. Multiple forged signatures, accounts in Marian's name, vacations charged while she lived alone. When Marian took the stand, she spoke with quiet strength. I trusted my son. I opened my home, my life. Instead, they closed doors on me and tried to erase me. Her words rippled through the courtroom. Caleb's lawyer objected, but the judge let her continue. Love does not excuse theft. Family does not excuse betrayal. Caleb's face crumpled, shame flickering across his features for the first time. Renee remained stone. Cross-examination was brutal. Caleb's lawyer tried to paint Marian as forgetful, confused. Isn't it true you sometimes misplace bills? He pressed. Marian's answer was calm. I misplace bills. I do not misplace $75,000 loans. The courtroom chuckled, even the judge smirking slightly. Renee was called next, her testimony dripping with self-pity. We only borrowed because she said she didn't need the money. She was lonely. We gave her company. Patricia's rebuttal was swift. Company doesn't require forged signatures. Renee faltered, her composure cracking. Chloe's name was mentioned briefly, but the judge quickly intervened. Leave the child out of this. Marian silently thanked him. The battle was hers alone. By the third day, the evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements, IP addresses, even security camera footage from the jewelry store showing Caleb signing with Marian's name. The jury exchanged knowing looks. Marian sat steady, hands folded in her lap, but inside her heart raced. She wasn't here to destroy her son. She was here to reclaim herself. Still, watching Caleb squirm under the prosecutor's questions was agony. How had her little boy become this man? She whispered a silent prayer, not for acquittal, not for punishment, but for truth. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Caleb's knees buckled as the judge read the charges. Renee grabbed his arm, her painted smile finally breaking into raw panic. Sentencing would come later, but the damage was already done. Marian closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. Not victory tears, not grief alone, something heavier. Patricia whispered, You did it. Marian nodded slowly. She hadn't destroyed Caleb. He had destroyed himself. All she had done was shine light on the ruins. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Hartwell, how does it feel to see your son convicted? Marian lifted her chin. It feels like truth. Painful truth, but necessary. No one is above accountability. Not even family. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed closer, but she added one last line before stepping away. I hope one day he remembers the man his father raised him to be. The soundbite made headlines the next morning. Mother chooses justice over silence. For Marian, it was never about headlines. It was about breathing freely again. That night, Marian sat alone in her apartment, staring at the quiet walls. The fight was over, yet her heart ached. She whispered into the silence, Tom, I never wanted it to end like this. But then she glanced at her folder, the one filled with every receipt, every lie, every scar. She had survived them all. Survival wasn't glamorous, but it was power. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Grandma, I love you. Can I come stay this weekend? Marian smiled through her tears. Yes, darling, she whispered. Always. The following weekend, Chloe arrived with her overnight bag. They baked cookies, watched movies, and talked about school. "Grandma," Chloe asked softly, "are you mad at Daddy forever?" Marian's throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. I'm not mad forever. But sometimes love means telling the truth, even when it hurts." Chloe nodded, slowly processing the answer. Marian pulled her close. "One day, you'll understand that protecting someone isn't always about saying yes. Sometimes it's about saying no." Chloe smiled faintly. "I'm glad you said no." For the first time in months, Marian laughed. A real laugh, light and unburdened. With the house sold and funds in her account, Marian began looking for a new home. Not an apartment she'd been pushed into, but one she would choose herself. Barbara drove her to a quiet neighborhood with a cottage surrounded by lilacs. "It's smaller, cozy, and all yours," Barbara said. Marian stepped inside, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and wood floors. She touched the walls gently, imagining Tom's photo on the mantel, Chloe's laughter echoing through the rooms. "Yes," she whispered. "This feels like mine." Barbara grinned. "Then let's make it official." Marian signed the papers with steady hands, reclaiming not just a house but a life. On moving day, Patricia stopped by with coffee. "Fresh start?" she asked, handing over the cup. Marian smiled. "The freshest." Together they unpacked boxes, hanging photos, arranging furniture. Patricia paused by a picture of Tom. "He'd be proud of you." Marian swallowed hard. "I hope so. I almost lost everything he left me." Patricia squeezed her hand. "You didn't lose it. You defended it. And that matters." Marian looked around the new space, sunlight spilling across the floor. For the first time in years she felt safe. News of Caleb's conviction spread through their extended family. Some relatives called Marian brave. Others whispered that she was cruel. She ignored both. Labels didn't matter. She knew her truth. At church, a few women pulled her aside. "You showed us it's okay to stand up, even to your own." Marian nodded, humbled. "It's not easy. But silence only feeds cruelty." Their words warmed her, though she also felt the weight of judgment from others. Still she stood tall, no longer bending to fit anyone's narrative but her own. Renee disappeared from social media after the trial. Her curated life shattered. Marian didn't miss the updates. Caleb's sentencing brought 2 years in prison, reduced for cooperation. He avoided Marian's gaze during the final hearing. As the guards led him away, Chloe clung to Marian's hand. "Will Daddy be okay?" she whispered. Marian knelt beside her. "Yes, darling. This will be hard, but sometimes hard things make us better." Chloe nodded, though her eyes brimmed with tears. Marian hugged her close, silently praying Caleb would someday understand. Weeks turned into months. Marian settled into her cottage, filling it with small joys: gardening, cooking, reading. Chloe visited often, her laughter brightening every room. Patricia remained a steady friend, stopping by with updates on the appeal process and coffee for their chats. "You're stronger than most people I know," Patricia told her one evening. Marian chuckled. "Strong? Maybe. Stubborn? Absolutely." Patricia smiled. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Marian sipped her tea, feeling lighter than she had in years. One quiet morning, Marian received a letter from Caleb. She hesitated before opening it, her hands trembling. Inside was a simple note: "I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say it." Tears blurred the ink. She folded the letter carefully, placing it in a drawer. Forgiveness would take time, maybe forever. But acknowledgement was a start. She whispered softly, "Maybe there's still hope." For the first time, the ache in her chest eased. Spring arrived, and with it renewal. Marian planted roses in her garden, Tom's favorite. As she knelt in the dirt, Chloe handed her a watering can. "Grandma, can we make this our special place?" Marian smiled, brushing soil from her hands. "Yes, darling. Ours." Together they tended the flowers, the air filled with laughter and sunlight. Neighbors waved as they passed, greeting Marian not as the woman who lost everything, but as the woman who rebuilt. She stood taller, the weight of betrayal finally behind her. On the first Sunday in her new home, Marian set the table with care. A photo of Tom sat at the center, framed by candles. Chloe giggled as she placed cookies on a plate. Patricia arrived with Barbara, bringing wine and warm smiles. For the first time in years, Marian's table was full, not of betrayal but of chosen family. She raised her glass. To truth, to freedom, to starting again. They clinked glasses, laughter filling the room. Marian closed her eyes briefly, feeling Tom's presence. She had lost much, but she had not lost herself. In fact, she had found her again. And that was the greatest victory of all.